Hello, my name is Shyla, and I want to share my home birth experience with you. So I have 5 children, and they were all born at home. And so basically, I'm just going to start with telling you why I chose that. So I was 19 years old when I found out I was pregnant, and I decided to attend some childbirth education classes. And I learned 2 important things while I was in those classes. So the first thing that I learned was that I needed to have a birthing plan. And they showed the importance of that. That way you could be in control, and the staff and your doctor or your midwife, whoever was attending, would know what the things were that were important to you, and they could follow that plan. So the other important thing that I learned was this idea that's called the cascade of intervention. And what that is, the cascade of intervention, is this idea that once you start with one type of intervention at the hospital, it leads to the next. So, for example, you arrive at the hospital and you're in labor, but your labor is not progressing very well. So they give you the first intervention, which would be Pitocin. So once you have the Pitocin, then it leads to the next intervention, because now your body's working really hard and you're in labor. Your labor is getting unbearable, and so now you have to use the second intervention, would be something for the pain. So that would be like an epidural or something like that. So each of these it's the idea of the cascade of intervention means one thing leads to the next. And now the baby becomes distressed because the body is not working in its natural way. And now it oftentimes leads to a C-section. So when I learned all of that stuff in this class, I thought, well, I'm not going to do any of those interventions. I'm going to make my plan, and I'm going to explain how I don't want any of those things. I don't want the epidural. I definitely don't want a C-section, so I'm going to do whatever I can to prevent those things from happening. So I made an appointment to have a tour of the hospital, and I was thinking about having my baby in the suite, the birthing suites that they have. So the tour guide took me through the hospital and into the birthing suite, and it was this beautiful room, and they had this nice bed and a hot tub and this little sitting area, and I thought, wow, this looks like a really great place to have my labor and delivery. But then the woman said, well, if there are any complications, then we'll move you over to this room. So she showed me the next room, and it was like this ordinary hospital room. And I kind of got scared. I looked at this hospital room, and I said, well, what do you mean by complications? And she said, like if you're going to need a C-section, or if the baby's distressed, they'll move you into this room. And I said, oh, what are the chances of that happening? And she said, probably about 30%. So I went home and I was like, 30%? There's no way. I'm not going to do that. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do a home birth. And I was already familiar with the idea because my mom she had 13 children, and she had 10 of them at home, and I had 2 sisters that had, they each had 1 baby at home. So I knew it was possible. And so at that time, you couldn't really do any internet research on whether this was a good idea or not. It was just like talk to friends, talk to family, and just do your own research. Find out how many people are having C-sections. So that's what I did. I just kind of did by word of mouth. Everybody told me their horror stories, and I said, okay. So I found a midwife, and she was really awesome. I had 3 different midwives for the 5 kids. 2 of them were water births, and water birth is amazing. I had a pool set up in my kitchen, and it's like nature's natural epidural. You just relax in that. It's just so nice to just be in the comfort of your own home and have labor in that. So all of those went really well, and so just since I plan on giving this presentation, since I didn't do any internet research back then, I decided, well, I'll do some for this so that I can see how home birth compares with hospital birth. So I found a research article done by the National Institute of Health, and it was a study that was done in Canada, and it was probably about 15 years ago, so it's not super recent, but Canada has pretty much the same statistics as US with C-section. So, which is last year in the US it was 31%. And so this study done in Canada was on about 13,000 women, and several of them did home birth, and several of them did hospital birth. And to be part of this study, they only included healthy women. You couldn't have had any previous problems. You couldn't have any previous issues in other pregnancies or any diseases or conditions. There was a whole list of stipulations that had to be met. So the results of this were that the mother and baby, in all cases, in the hospital births and in the home births, were pretty equal. Everybody was healthy, there weren't deaths and things like that. Everything was pretty equal with home birth in comparison to hospital birth. And so that all looked really good with really low rates on any problems, infections, things like that. But the thing that I did notice were the interventions, so that cascade of interventions that take place in hospitals, those were much higher in all of the areas. So you saw more C-sections, more epidurals, more episiotomies, which is the cutting of the perineum. So anyway, I saw a lot of those interventions that were used, and so I'm glad that I made that decision because I feel like I saved myself that, and I was able to be in charge of my own experience. And so if you like to be in charge of your own experience and want to consider that, I just wanted to share this experience with you. And it was an amazing experience. There's nothing better than being at your own house and making all the rules for your own labor and birth. And then when you're all done, you get to climb into your own warm bed with your baby